Crew, they have donned their garments, their undergarments, if you will. Nick Hague, just off on the right side of your screen. They will be assisted through that hatchway to close the hatch behind them. That hatch closure expected about 30 minutes, perhaps a bit less than that.
Freedom, Houston, on 2, stand by for big loop audio config.
Jim copies, and I'll need 2 minutes before I can do a comm check.
We copy.
Spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell here in Mission Control in Houston, part of the Orbit 3 team, who will be talking to the crew members as they complete the hatch closure and then subsequently the undocking of the International Space Station. She is part of that Orbit 3 team that is led by Flight Director Marcos Flores tonight. He is the lead flight director for the Crew-9 mission. In the foreground, popping in and out of the field of view, is NASA astronaut Anne McClain, the commander of the Dragon Endurance, that automatically docked to the forward port of the Harmony module in the wee hours of Sunday morning to initiate about 1+ days of handover activities with the Crew-9 crew. The abbreviated handover was specifically designed to provide as many undocking opportunities as possible for Crew-9. The decision to bring the Crew-9 crew back to Earth on Tuesday was dictated by what is forecast to be pristine weather conditions at the various landing sites in the Gulf of America that the Dragon Freedom will be coming home to late Tuesday afternoon, with splashdown scheduled at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Nick Hague, the commander of the Dragon Freedom, floating through the hatchway. We will see Williams and Wilmore shortly as they are completing their suit-up activities. The final suit-up will take place once the 4 crew members are inside Dragon and the hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch on that side of the docking interface will be closed after the Dragon hatch is closed. Informal suit and seat fit checks on orbit using 2 spare suits on the International Space Station. The SpaceX team supported this effort and gathered data to make an informed decision on the suits that they would wear on the ride home and the seat sizing. A new suit was actually flown up for Butch Wilmore on the Crew-9 mission that arrived on the station at the end of September. Wilmore and Williams also performed suit donning and doffing activities to familiarize themselves with the suits and with Dragon systems during the handover between Crew-8 and Crew-9 back in September. And this is not a new activity for Williams and Wilmore. They actually were aboard in those suits during a port relocation that transferred the Freedom spacecraft, the Dragon Freedom, from the forward port of Harmony to the zenith port of Harmony back in November. Once Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanoff depart the International Space Station just over 2 hours from now, the 7 crew members left aboard the International Space Station will continue the Expedition 72 increment, led by the commander of the station, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin, joined by his cosmonaut colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Peskov having just arrived on the station as part of Crew-10. Also continuing on in orbit, NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi. Don Pettit will be coming home in late April 19th, in fact, U.S. time, on the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft that he rode to orbit in, along with Ovchinin and Wagner from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The International Space Station is currently flying 260 miles above the Earth, currently crossing the southeastern coast of Africa, moving in a trajectory from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. At the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, California, the SpaceX flight controllers are reporting that all of Freedom's systems are in excellent shape. Nick Hague there, as you see on your screen, stowing some last-minute items aboard the Dragon spacecraft that he is commanding from undocking through splashdown. The weather has been monitored for the splashdown sites in the Gulf of America throughout the day. The reports continue to be that the weather is forecast to be excellent for Dragon's homecoming on Tuesday afternoon. From the time of undocking through splashdown, it's a fairly short phasing, as they term the ballistics end of the operation. About 17 hours of transit between the time the Dragon will undock from the International Space Station and the time it will splash down. Again, splashdown off the coast of Florida in the Gulf is scheduled for 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon. We should be seeing Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore shortly. At the time of splashdown, predicted to be Tuesday afternoon, Williams again will have logged 286 days in space on this, her third flight, and a total of 608 days in space, the second most by any American astronaut, right behind Peggy Whitson, who has 675 days in space on her bio. Butch Wilmore, with his 286 days in space at the time of splashdown tomorrow, on this, his third flight, will have logged 464 days in space. Nick Hague, wrapping up his third mission with 171 days in space, will have a total of 374 days in space, to his credit. And again, Alexander Gorbunov of Roscosmos ending his first flight into space with a splashdown tomorrow and a total of 171 days on his.
Sounded like a good comm check with SpaceX. At your convenience, we'll take a comm check with us.
And Houston, Freedom's got you loud and clear.
Copy.
With those voice checks between Nick Hague and the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne and the Flight Control Room here in Houston, you're seeing Don Pettit and Alexei Ovchinin taking photographs of Butch Wilmore in his entry suit. Sonny Williams is in the foreground near the hatchway. Once again, there are two SpaceX Dragons at the International Space Station. The one that the Crew-9 crew will be departing in a couple of hours from now is on the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The newly arrived Crew-10 crew docked early Sunday morning to the forward port of Harmony in their Dragon Endurance. And you see at the hatchway the four departing Crew-9 crew members posing for some final photos. Final handshakes and hugs between the departing Crew-9 crew members and the crew members who will remain on board the International Space Station, maintaining a continuous. And now inside Dragon, you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. In the center of your screen, Alexander Gorbanov, Nick Hague on the far right. They will settle into their respective seats aboard Freedom as countdown clocks here in Mission Control are ticking backward toward the time of the command. What we peg as undocking for the history books is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily to transition the state machine to hatch closed. You can reference your hatch closed event details for a few actions, and then complete suit donning per procedure 4.010.
Freedom copies all.
And Nick Hague aboard Freedom confirming that Dragon's hatch to the International Space Station is closed. That call coming at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So the Crew-9 crew now safely aboard the Dragon Freedom will complete their suit-up procedures, do systems checks. There will be a series of leak checks between Freedom and the International Space Station at the docking interface. You see Sunny Williams on the far right-hand side of your screen. She will be seated next to Nick Hague, the Freedom commander. To Hague's right will be Alexander Gorbanov, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. The undocking between Freedom and the International Space Station will take Freedom above and behind the orbital laboratory through a series of what are known as departure burns. Freedom then will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday afternoon, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That will slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of Florida. Once again, the 4 Dragon Freedom crew members you see in this view. Butch Wilmore on the far left, Alexander Gorbanov with his back to the camera, Nick Hague just out of the field of view, and Sunny Williams on the far right of your screen. The hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The station hatch will be closed just a short time from now, enabling a series of leak checks to occur to make sure we have an airtight seal before the pressurization of pressurized mating adapter number 2 can begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the commanding of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony with undocking schedule. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew-9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Sonny Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande Hei, NASA astronaut, logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289. Astronaut Nick Hague. On the far right of your screen, Sonny Williams. Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov is completing a few adjustments to items with his suit just a few moments from now, and all 4 crew members will be positioned, ready for undocking and the beginning of a 17-hour trip back to Earth and a conclusion to this mission. As mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that Wilmore and Williams have been aboard the Dragon Freedom.
SpaceX Freedom, contract from C2.
C2 SpaceX, we have you loud and clear. How me?
Get you the same. I'm suited and seated, working on Alex, and we'll be finishing up and ready for CP checks here shortly.
SpaceX copies all.
That communication between the spacecraft communicator at SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and Dragon's commander Nick Hague. The communications checks continuing. Alexander Gorbanov yet to suit up. He will momentarily. As mentioned earlier, Williams and Wilmore not strangers to the Dragon Freedom. They have practiced suit-up procedures over the course of the past few months and took a ride aboard Freedom for a few minutes back on November 3rd when the spacecraft undocked from the forward port of the Harmony module and relocated to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Slightly longer trip for Williams and Wilmore today, a 17-hour journey that will take them to a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Just to recap, the 4 crew members who are coming home tomorrow aboard the SpaceX Dragon Freedom are all inside Freedom. 3 of the crew members suited up and strapped into their seats. Alexander Gorbanov is completing some preparations before he dons his entry suit. The hatch between Freedom and the International Space Station was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We are awaiting the closing of the hatch between the International Space Station on that side of the docking interface to permit leak checks to begin and ensure that we have an airtight seal before the vestibule or passageway is depressurized prior to undocking. The Dragon crew members will also undergo leak checks to their suits and further communications checks prior to the undocking itself, which is scheduled about an hour and 41 minutes from now at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern. So, as we stand by for confirmation that the station hatch is closed on that side of the docking interface, that activity to be supervised by Ann McClain, the NASA astronaut and commander of the Dragon Endurance that just arrived at the International Space Station, kicking off a handover period of just over a day between the 2 crews, an abbreviated handover compared to others that have preceded it, that designed to provide this opportunity for undocking, thus maximizing the best weather conditions that were forecast for this coming week, over the next few days. This is our best shot with pristine weather off the coast of Florida to bring the Crew-9 crew home.
Houston Station on 2 for IDA egress.
Go ahead on 2.
We are in step 5.2 and we found some pieces of dust around the hatch seal area, so we are going to clean them with cotton tape.
Copy and concur with the plan.
Japan Aerospace Exploration. Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi newly arrived on the station as part of Crew 10, noticing a few flecks of dust along the hatch seals, so he will clean those off. We want to make sure that there's no foreign object debris at that hatch seal that could compromise the integrity of an airtight seal between pressurized mating adapter number 2 and the interface with the Dragon Freedom. You're looking right across Nick Hague, the commander of the Dragon Freedom, the mission director at SpaceX's Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, reporting back to NASA Flight Director Marcos Flores here in Mission Control in Houston that we're just about ready for suit leak checks.
Waiting for call for 5.3.
TOC, you are go for step 5.3.
Okay, copy. We are go for closing the apex hatch, and I have one question for you.
Go ahead.
Another view of the crew aboard Dragon Freedom looking.
There is one SpaceX bag. It's labeled as unarmed PFD. The bag number is 153, and its carabiner is attached to one of the bungees in PMS3. Can we just leave it as it is?
Checking.
Once again, you're looking at a view across the four crew members, Butch Wilmore in the foreground, Alexander Gorbanoff to his left, then Nick Hague, and just obscured on the far right-hand side of this configuration is Sonny Williams.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, section 5 complete. We've got everybody suited with successful intercom checks.
SpaceX copies on successful intercom checks. Continue to section 6.
Freedom, welcome.
And in preparation of the leak checks of the 4 suits by the Crew-9 crew members, Butch Wilmore and the others putting their hands in their gloves. Those will be securely zipped in place before the leak checks will begin.
Station Houston on the big loop for the bag.
Go ahead, on to.
We would like you to remove that bag from PMA3 temp stow in node 2, and we will find a permanent home for it after the undock.
Okay, we'll temp stow it in node 2.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, section 6 is complete.
SpaceX copies completion of 4.010.
The hatch between the International Space Station and pressurized mating adapter number 2 is now closed. The Dragon hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Just about 2 minutes ago at 10:26 Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern, the station hatch also closed, and that sets the stage for the vestibule depressurization and final leak checks at the docking interface. Another perspective of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanoff. Butch Wilmore is to Gorbanoff's right. Essentially, you're looking over the shoulder of Sonny Williams, who's in the far left seat, if you will, in the seating configuration on the Dragon Freedom.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. You have a go for procedure 4.011. We'll meet you in section 2 when ready.
Freedom copies, go for 4.011, see the tip, and press through section 1. Check in with you in section 2.
The crew closing their visors in advance of the individual leak checks on their suits.
Station Houston on the big loop for Ann prior to hatch close.
Right, Tess?
And taking a look at stowage and PMA3 currently, we are seeing the APAS hatch cover, and we need that to go into the 0.5 CTB for DMAC.
Okay, we will put the hatch cover into the half CTB.
Thank you.
That conversation between Capcom Tess Caswell here in Mission Control and Ann McLean in your field of view, the Dragon Endurance Commander.
We are ready to pressurize.
As she checks the integrity of the hatch interface on the station side, the station hatch is closed. That's the androgynous docking adapter hatch. One more hatch has to be closed. That's the one between Harmony and the vestibule to International Docking Adapter 2. Meanwhile, leak checks now are beginning on the 4 suits of the Dragon Crew-9 passengers aboard the Dragon Freedom. The suit leak checks are underway. This should only take a minute or two.
And the Houston station on 2, checking for step 7.4.
TOC, you are go to deploy desiccant in 7.4.
Copy, go for 7.4.
Freedom. We've got 4 good suits.
Freedom, we see the same, 4 healthy suits.
And that call by Dragon Commander Nick Hague confirming that all 4 suits of the departing Freedom crew members have checked out, good leak checks on the suits, good integrity on those suits. So we now have set the stage for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew-9 crew members just about 1 hour and 24 minutes from now. Just to recap, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore accompanying Commander Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov for the ride downhill and a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon. We will be resuming our coverage, joined not just here at the Johnson Space Center but by our colleagues in Hawthorne, California at the SpaceX Control Center. We will be back on the air just over an hour from now at 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time, for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew-9 crew from the International Space Station. The weather conditions off the coast of Florida and the splashdown sites continues to be good, with splashdown of Williams, Wilmore, Gorbanov, and Hague scheduled for Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. So with the Crew-9 crew strapped into their seats and good leak checks for their suits on the Dragon Freedom, we'll sign off for now, and we'll be back with you just over an hour from now for our undocking coverage. For now, we'll sign off. This is Mission Control Houston. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a momentous night to begin the journey home for Crew-9. Williams and Wilmore, having launched back on June 5th on a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, propulsion system issues resulted in a decision by NASA to bring Williams and Wilmore home on the SpaceX Dragon Freedom spacecraft. Crew-9, that meaning Hague and Gorbanov, launched with 2 empty seats aboard Freedom back in late September, clearing the way for Williams and Wilmore to join them on the ride home, the beginning of which will occur just about 2 hours and 12 minutes from now with the undocking of Freedom from that space-facing port on the Harmony module. Williams and Wilmore will have spent 286 days in space, 285 of which aboard the International Space Station. They will have completed 4,576 orbits of the Earth in a mission spanning 121.3 million statute miles. Hague and Gorbanov's, their mission duration, 171 days, 170 days of which aboard the International Space Station. Their mission will have spanned 2,736 orbits of the Earth, 72.5 million statute miles. And you see at the hatchway the 4 departing Crew-9 crew members posing for some final photos. Final handshakes and hugs between the departing Crew-9 crew members and the crew members who will remain on board the International Space Station, maintaining a continuous human presence on the orbital laboratory that began on November 2nd, 2000. And now inside Dragon, you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. In the center of your screen, Alexander Gorbanov. They will settle into their respective seats aboard Freedom as countdown clocks here in Mission Control are ticking backward toward the time of the command to initiate the opening of hooks holding Freedom to its docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. That command to be issued about an hour and 55 minutes from now. The actual physical separation, what we peg as undocking for the history books, is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily to transition the state machine to hatch closed. You can reference your hatch closed event details for a few actions, and then complete suit donning per procedure 4.010.
Freedom, copy all.
And Nick Hague aboard Freedom confirming that Dragon's hatch to the International Space Station is closed. That call coming at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So the Crew-9 crew now safely aboard the Dragon Freedom will complete their suit-up procedures, do systems checks. There will be a series of leak checks between Freedom and the International Space Station at the docking interface. You see Sunny Williams on the far right-hand side of your screen. She will be seated next to Nick Hague, the Freedom commander. To Hague's right will be Alexander Gorbanov, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. Once again, you're looking at a view across the four crew members. Butch Wilmore on the foreground, Alexander Gorbanov to his left, and Nick Hague, and just obscured on the far right-hand side of this configuration is Sunny Williams. Another perspective of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov. Butch Wilmore is to Gorbanov's right. Essentially, you're looking over the shoulder of Sunny Williams, who's in the far left seat, if you will, in the seating configuration on the Dragon Freedom.
Freedom, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock complete and nominal. Houston and Hawthorne teams have told go for undock sequence start at 0500 Zulu. I'm looking for you to confirm visors down and crew are ready for undock and departure at the planned time.
SpaceX Freedom. Visors are down and we are go for undock at the planned time.
SpaceX copies. Crew are configured for undock.
At the moment, the crew is suited up, as they are during what we call dynamic phases of flight. And we did hear a call out a short time ago for the crew to go ahead and put their visors down ahead of the actual undocking itself. Before they depart the International Space Station, let's take a quick moment to get to know the crew we're bringing home tomorrow for the splashdown rather. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew-9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013, and this was his second space flight to the International Space Station and third launch overall. He's spent 171 days in space with Crew-9 and has a career total of 374 days in space. During his mission, he completed a spacewalk with astronaut Sunny Williams. That was his fourth spacewalk, earning him a career total of 25 hours, 56 minutes of spacewalking time. Before Crew-9, Hague previously served as a crew member of Expedition 59 and 60 back in 2019. He flew with Alexei Ovchinin and NASA's Christina Cook, so this is actually his second time sharing the space station with Ovchinin. The Kansas native is a test pilot and distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the U.S. Space Force in 2021. And he is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
NASA astronaut Sunny Williams is a mission specialist for Crew-9. This was her third visit to the space station. She originally launched aboard Boeing's Starliner spacecraft and arrived at the space station on June 6th. Following the agency's decision to return Starliner uncrewed, she became an Expedition 71-72 crew member. She logged 286 days in space on this mission. Sunny has a total of 608 days in space, earning her the ranking of second most time in space by a NASA astronaut. Former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson ranks first with 675 days in space. Sunny conducted 2 spacewalks and has completed 9 over the course of her career, for a total of 62 hours and 6 minutes of spacewalking time. She ranks 4th on the list of cumulative time spacewalking by a NASA astronaut. Previously, she served on Expedition 14 and 15 in 2007, and again with Expedition 32 and 33 in 2012. She is a retired U.S. Navy captain and a proud graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy.
Next up is NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore, who is also serving as a mission specialist today. This is his 3rd space flight, and just like Sunny, he logged 286 days in space. He conducted 1 spacewalk and has completed 5 over the course of his career, earning him a total spacewalking time of 21 hours, 2 minutes. He's flown on 4 different spacecraft throughout his career: Space Shuttle Atlantis, Soyuz, Boeing Starliner, and now the SpaceX Dragon. Previously, the Mount Juliet, Tennessee native served on STS-129 in 2009 and Expedition 41 and 42 from 2014 to 2015. Wilmore is also a retired captain in the U.S. Navy.
Alexander Gorbanov is the third mission specialist serving on today's mission. Crew-9 was his first space flight to the space station, earning him a total of 171 days in space over the course of his career. Gorbanov, along with Nick Hague, saw the arrival of 4 visiting vehicles and saw the departure of 4 as well. The duo orbited the Earth more than 2,700 times. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, Gorbanov worked as an engineer for a Rocket Space Corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Once the physical separation occurs between Dragon and the docking port on Harmony, it will begin to move above the station at a very slow rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. Then we'll move behind the station. A series of departure burns will then put it on a trajectory to carry it below the station and on its way to a safe distance away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn that will occur at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon to begin the final leg of the ride home for Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanov.
All hooks open.
All hooks are open. And undocking confirmed. Freedom is free of its moorings. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore begin their belated trip home.
Separation confirmed.
Undocking occurring right on time at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Good motion, good stability on Dragon as it backs away.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, depart burn 0 nominal.
Good opening rate reported by the visiting vehicle officer. Dragon's attitude control system functioning as advertised.
Houston Freedom on the big loop. On behalf of Crew-9, I'd like to say it was a privilege to call station home, to live and work and be a part of a mission and a team that spans the globe working together in cooperation for the benefit of humanity. To our colleagues and dear friends who remain on the station, Alex and Dave Bertot, Grill, we know the station's in great hands. We're excited to see what you guys are going to accomplish, and we'll be waiting for you. Crew-9's going home.
Houston Station on the big loop. Step 2, ISS thrusters are verified enabled. To Crew-9, safe journey home. It's been the honor of a lifetime to cross your path up here on Space Station. Your service has been very much appreciated, and we'll miss you, but have a great journey home.
We could spend more time with you guys, but many people who love you and whom you love are waiting for you, so safe travel, Godspeed.
And for crew arrival, we ring a bell in Navy tradition, and for Crew-9, I did a baritone salute as you undocked.
We love you guys.
So an exchange of poignant words between the Dragon commander, Nick Hague, as well as the Crew-10 crew, the newly arrived Crew-10 crew members, Ann McLean, Takoya Onishi, and Don Pettit offering their best wishes and Godspeed for a safe return to Earth on Tuesday afternoon for the quartet aboard the Dragon Freedom.
Here, a view that we have once again between the shoulders of Commander Nick Hague, who is on the left-hand side of your screen there, and Mission Specialist Alexander Gorbanov there on the right.
Freedom, SpaceX. Deorbit sequence start in 5 minutes.
Freedom tap.
So we did hear that call out for the deorbit sequence start to begin here in 5 minutes. That call from the ground came from the CORE, or Crew Operations Resource Engineer here in Hawthorne, Mission Control just behind us, and that went up to Commander Nick Hague. He's going to be doing the majority of the communications during the flight downhill today through splashdown, and they'll be communicating with the CORE all along the way. Now, we did mention that they are flying on Crew Dragon Freedom. The naming of spacecraft has gone all the way back to the very beginning of this human spaceflight program. This is a nod to Alan Shepard naming his spacecraft Freedom 7 during the Mercury program. And so the crew that first flew up on Freedom a few years ago had the opportunity to name this Dragon, and they named it Freedom. That was Crew 4 that was the first flyers on this spacecraft. It's also flown for Axiom Mission 2 and 3, and then, of course, today for Crew-9 as well. And I did hear confirmation that that deorbit burn is underway. As we mentioned, it's about a 7.5-minute burn. So within the last 10 minutes, Dragon has jettisoned its trunk and initiated the deorbit burn just seconds ago. As mentioned earlier, for those operations, NASA and SpaceX closely coordinate with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew on board the returning spacecraft.
Dragon Freedom has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site right off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. So basically, it is the last burn that the Dragon spacecraft executes and is what really locks it in for that precise landing. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, Dragon is flying itself. So all the crew has to do is stay strapped into their seats and keep tabs on things. Although I must say, if I had one of those window seats, it would be pretty difficult to restrain myself.
Deorbit burn complete. Performance nominal. Nose cone closure initiated.
And while on board the International Space Station, Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander contributed to over 900 hours of science and research investigations, which is really the key purpose of the International Space Station. Now, the International Space Station is celebrating a major milestone this year where they will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence in November. So if you're younger than 25 years, you've never known a day where there hasn't been a human living and working aboard the International Space Station, contributing to key science and research investigations that impact our lives here on Earth. There's research being done on Parkinson's, on osteoporosis, on cancer research, and a variety of other studies. Additionally, the microgravity laboratory provides a jumping off point for us as we venture back to the moon and onto Mars through longer duration space flights. One such example that the crew worked on during this mission was an alternative exercise device. In microgravity, the crew has to exercise for about 2 hours a day because they're not having the effects of gravity on their body. So to prevent bone and muscle loss, we counteract that with 2 hours of exercise per day. On board the International Space Station, they have 3 ways in which they can exercise. They have a bike, they have a treadmill, and they have a similar to a weightlifting machine that counteracts the microgravity environment. But a particular experiment that this crew tested out was a combination of all 3 of those in one smaller device. And this is really critical as we continue on to the moon, Mars, and beyond, because space is really important in spacecraft. So if we have something smaller that the crew might be able to utilize, that can potentially help us venture out even further into the solar system. So science is really the name of the game when it comes to the International Space Station. Some of the other science highlights that took place during this increment that are particularly interesting to me was we had the first wooden satellite that was deployed. This is a study to see if other materials might be more resourceful or renewable in space. So I'm really excited to see the results of that one as well. Additionally, we had a couple of spacewalks that took place to not only provide maintenance to the International Space Station, but also where we swabbed the outside of the space station near vents to see if any microbes that we all have microbes on us, to see if any of those could survive in the harsh environment of space, which again is very important for us to know and understand as we continue to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
Very exciting stuff. Now, At this point, we have now entered the communications blackout period for the Dragon spacecraft. This lasts approximately 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft itself. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. But as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself. During reentry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour. The top temperature that Dragon will experience upon reentry is 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This blackout period, as I said before, we expect it to last about 7 minutes today, concluding at 5:51 p.m. Eastern Time or 2:51 p.m. Pacific Time. We right there have our first view of Dragon Freedom coming home to Earth.
And that view is from the WB-57, which is one of NASA's high-altitude planes that is tracking. Now, because of the way that this camera is configured, it does look like it is dark, but it is indeed daytime, and you're beginning to see that plasma trail as Dragon re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. All of that is expected. We are anticipating an acquisition of signal around 2:51 p.m. Pacific Time, so just minutes from now, and you may hear the core begin to hail out or call Dragon for communications and see if we can potentially get communications with them a little bit earlier. Following this, we'll have two events in rapid succession. We'll have the drogue parachutes deploy at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, followed by the mains just 1 minute later at 2:54 p.m. Pacific Time, ahead of a splashdown at 2:57 p.m. Pacific Time off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Pretty incredible views of the Dragon spacecraft making its way home back to planet Earth with the Crew-9 astronauts on board. Once again, this view is coming from the WB-57 plane. That heat shield we can see doing magnificent work as it works to...
Freedom, SpaceX, comm check.
All right, we're going to start hearing the SpaceX Crew Operations Resource Engineer.
SpaceX Freedom is with you. 4.6 feet. Enjoying the ride.
Copy that, Freedom.
Great news there from Commander Nick Hague reporting back.
We see a healthy flight computer. Expect automated chute deployment.
Freedom copies.
Like we said before, things moving very quickly as Dragon Freedom makes its way home. Next event coming up will be deployment of the drogue parachutes. This occurs around 18,000 feet.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deployment.
We're about 2 minutes away from deployment of those drogue parachutes. Now the heat shield is continuing to work to slow the vehicle down. That entry period, the Dragon spacecraft went from orbital velocity about 17,500 miles per hour down to about 350 miles per hour. So it really gives you a sense of why that plasma builds up on the exterior of the capsule, thanks to the heat shield and the work that it does. Those drogue parachutes will slow it down from 350 to about 119 miles per hour. We can see
15 kilometers. Brace for drogue window.
We can see seat rotation happening inside the capsule. Great to get those first views of our crew members. Once again, the capsules are going about 350 miles per hour when the drogues are deployed. Those drogue parachutes that we manufacture here in-house are going to slow the spacecraft down to 119 miles per hour. And that is when we will see the main parachutes deploy, and that occurs about 6,000 feet above the ocean's surface.
And we are expecting drogue deployment at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, so we should see it any second now. And there you are getting a great view of Crew-9 inside Dragon Freedom as it returns back to Earth. We are awaiting the drogue deploys. This view coming from the WB-57 high-altitude plane. And there you see it on your screen, drogue deployment.
Drogue descent rate nominal.
You can hear the crowd here.
Visual on 2 healthy probes.
The crowd here very excited as Dragon Freedom continues to make its way back to planet Earth.
Next up, we'll stand by for the main deployment of the parachutes. The mains are quite a bit larger. You'll be able to notice the difference on your screen once they deploy, and they continue to ensure that the Dragon spacecraft slows down even further. As we mentioned, Freedom will be traveling 16 miles per hour when it splashes down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida, here at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. And there we go.
We have visual on 4 healthy mains.
That view was from inside.
Freedom copy.
That view was from inside one of the buckets where the parachutes are located. So we see a great view there of the reefing on those parachutes. And as those main parachutes begin to inflate fully, 4 beautiful, healthy mains. Now awaiting visuals of splashdown.
Freedom.
We'll start to hear Commander Nick Hague.
Copy 1000.
As we heard right there, Commander Nick Hague will be calling out the altitude of the Dragon capsule from here on out. Landing in water is simpler and provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. You can see those parachutes continuing to slow the Dragon capsule down.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at
800 meters.
a live view of Crew-9, just minutes away from splashing down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Splashdown 2 minutes from now at 2:57 p.m. Pacific. We do have 4 healthy mains really doing the job there. Just breathtaking views of a calm, glass-like ocean off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Crew-9 just minutes away from splashing down.
This is really such an incredible shot.
Copy 600.
That was a live view from our recovery vessel, Megan, which is stationed a couple miles away from the splashdown site. We can see the crew there using their restraints as resting places for their arms. They were just in space moments ago, so their arms were able to float freely.
400 meters.
And splashdown. Crew-9 back on Earth.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown. Good main release.
Copy splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
It is an amazing, what a ride. I see a capsule full of grins ear to ear.
And as you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation of splashdown. Dragon Freedom has returned home, and NASA astronauts.
System safety verifications are in progress. We'll report back when recovery personnel are en route.
Understand. We're in section 2, 4.800 landing response. And looking for your words on if it is necessary.
Freedom, SpaceX, ComCheck.
Freedom's got you loud and clear.
Thanks, Nick. Got you loud and clear as well. We have completed our forward link transition.
Crew-9 splashdown off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Butch Wilmore, Sunny Williams, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunov. They're now working through procedures to hoist this spacecraft up onto the recovery vessel Megan.
We just saw that hydraulic arm get lowered into the lifting position. That arm will be the mechanism that is utilized to lift Dragon up and out of the water and into the nest located there at the aft end of the recovery vessel. It is important to note that Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while exiting the spacecraft. This is the same process for any returning long-duration as you can imagine, returning to a gravity environment can wreak havoc on our vestibular system, which is responsible for maintaining balance and motion. Of course, safety is our number one priority with this operation, so we'll see the crew members helped out of the spacecraft one by one, and they will be assisted the few feet to the medical quarters aboard the boat.
And there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September.
We can see some of the protective equipment there that was brought into frame that will help protect the edge of the side hatch, one from any potential damage. Oh, we can see the recovery crew member there taking photos of the side hatch seal. This is part of the standard operation for recovery. These photos will get saved into our procedure.
And there we do see Crew-9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
We can see folks on board clapping as our first crew member.
And that is NASA astronaut Nick Hague, commander of Crew-9. Now out of Crew Dragon Freedom. Some smiles, thumbs up, and a wave. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah, that is one happy camper.
Next up out of the capsule, we expect Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. His first space flight. Spent 171 days in space alongside NASA astronaut Nick Hague.
Looks like we're getting some cheers and clapping on board as Alexander is slid down the little ramp and placed into the mobility aid. Once again, big smile. Looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Sunny Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members, now will be assisted onto the mobility aid.
There we have it, some waves, some thumbs up, and some smiles.
Definitely seems to be a theme among all recovery operations.
Absolutely. And of course, that leaves NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore inside Dragon in seat 4. We're getting some views of him now as he egresses or exits the spacecraft.
Once again, some elation and cheers there from Butch Wilmore. As we mentioned before, returning to Earth from coming from a microgravity environment can wreak havoc on the body. So it is customary and just standard procedure for all of our long-term space residents to get assistance once they are back on board the recovery vessel.